This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Ed Smith. Got plenty on our plates, so let's get to it. The Tigers blew two chances and got eliminated. The loss to the Guardians 7-3 in Game 5 of the American League Division Series. My goodness, Tarek Skubal, out of all people, gave up a grand slam to Lane Thomas, and the offense also fails to deliver. So, truth or dare? Let's get to that news segment right away. And just to the audience as well, answer them the best you can. Who is to blame for the Tigers' ALDS elimination?
For me, it's really not a difficult selection. The truth would be the Tigers' offense. Simply put, granted, yes, I did always say that in terms of wanting to advance and winning games in the postseason, one of the components would have to be getting timely hitting. And we did see that to some extent with the Tigers, at the very least, with how they did against Houston and how they did in the first three games, so to speak, or at least the games that they won against Cleveland here. But when you have situations to where over the course of the last two or so games, the Tigers had a combined, what I believe it was 2-23 with runners in scoring position. Okay, you have guys like Matt Vierling trying to pay his personal tribute to Gerald Laird. Remember the game 163 performance he had against the Twins? I think Matt Vierling was trying to match that single-handedly by himself in Game 4. Outside of Carpenter, Torkelson, massive disappointment for the majority of the series and the season, if you want to be quite frankly honest. The top of the lineup not producing, trying to rely on clutch hitting from your 7, 8, 9 guys. As much as I love Jake Rogers, he shouldn't be a guy you shouldn't be relying on for clutch hits. It's just as simple as that. And the fact that in the biggest game of the year, when your ace, your horse, is doing his damnedest to keep you in the game, especially when Riley Green almost had a mishap in the outfield that he had to personally apologize to Skubal for, I am not going to put the blame on the guy who, frankly, if it wasn't for his arm and his performances, the Tigers would not even be in the playoffs, let alone in a Game 5 with a chance to go to the ALCS. And Skubal, yes, he gave him the grand slam. Yes, he melted down and fell apart. But you know what could have helped him out? Some damn run support from his offense. His bats failed him more than he failed the team.
Yeah, and it's typical. It's just the typical offense, of course. And on our YouTube channel, just my picture is freezing up, but we can still hear it. To be honest with you, people can still hear it, so we're good to go. By the way, a little.
Trust me, podcasts are more meant to be heard, not seen. So we're good in that department.
Exactly. So yeah, at least listen to it on YouTube, even in video form, video or audio, it doesn't matter. But really, this offense really, really sucks. Matt Vierling, like you mentioned before, also Colt Keith has had an awful playoff run.
Mm-hmm.
It just even Kerry Carpenter has been.
I will give Carpenter some credit to an extent because
wait, yeah, well, not the entire play. I didn't say the entire playoffs. he hit that 3-run home run, and then he hit a home run in Game 5 of the ALDS. That's all he could do.
Well, not home run. He had what it was like. It was a single because, like I said, he was dealing with the oblique injury, and frankly, he was again that limited his capacity of what he could do even after hitting the ball. That's why instead of a double that he hit, I think it was in Game 5 that scored Torkelson, I believe it was just only a single because that's how much of in pain that he was dealing with that injury. But I didn't get enough timely hits from Riley Green. Like I said, aside from Parker Meadows, like Meadows and Carpenter were pretty much the only two guys consistently that showed up on offense for the Tigers. Everyone else was blah.
Yeah, I know, right? So anyway,
but in terms of what this means for the future of the team, like, let's be honest, literally no one, maybe outside of AJ Hinch, could have foreseen this type of run happening to close out the season. It gives you optimism from the sense of, hey, if we can compete the way we competed with this current group of players, knowing the coaches that we have, knowing the development that we can get out of our players, knowing the prospects that we have on deck, yeah, this team has something, but you still need key pieces to put yourself over the top in position to where you can win more games, compete for championships. That's why we have free agency. That's why you spend money when necessary on key problems and key holes to fill out the rest of your team as best as possible. As much as we can say, Mike Ehlers may have treated the Tigers like a redheaded stepchild the way he during his tenure because he was also in control of the wings. He did at least woke up and smell the coffee. He did realize that at some point he had to spend money to make this team at least decent or look good or be competitive, let alone compete for championships. It started slowly but surely, getting guys like Putz Rodriguez, then slowly but surely getting guys like Magli Ordonez, making the deal, making moves to bring in Miguel Cabrera, signing Prince Fielder, signing Victor Martinez, that David Price, Scherzer. The list goes on and on with the moves that Mr. I was trying to make during his last few years of life to try to bring this team a World Series. Now, I am not saying that his son, Chris, should follow in that same path, even though it would be a nice change of character to see from his ass. But what I'm saying is, knowing that the deficiencies in certain spots in the lineup that had been there, not just for the playoffs, but have been there for the entire season. Like, honestly, literally one big reason, like I think it's two big reasons why, well, three actually, that the Tigers made the playoffs. One, the Twins collapsing. Two, Tarek Skubal. And three, four actually. Three, your bullpen. And four, no Javi Baez. Notice the convenience of having no Baez in that lineup, bringing that offense down, sinking this team's chances, and then look what happened. And yet you have the front office and AJ Hinch to an extent saying, oh, we're going to try to find a role for Javi next year. Why? Just buy the dude out, see what you can find on the market, and find yourself a more suitable guy in the infield.
They're too loyal to do that, to be honest with you.
Please, they're too loyal with the wrong people. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, don't get me wrong. I got number love for Matt Vierling, but if I need a better third baseman to not boot ground balls the way he did in Game 1. There's a reason why I've been looking online and then seeing mock projections of what the Tigers could do in the offseason, and one of those includes bringing in an Alex Bregman, for example, because the signs and it would, because honestly it would be a move that would make too much sense for the obvious reasons. But it's just something to look for, or at least hype up to the best of your ability, because we don't know how winter meetings are going to proceed. We don't know how the whole winter is going to look between now and spring training. Who can make that step up? Who will be available? Who's going to make that signing? Who's going to be commit to try and make an attempt to sign someone? It's still unclear because, again, it's still fresh and raw in everyone's mind. The season just ended for the Tigers. There's still other baseball going on. I would say if we get any type of news or development in the winter meetings saying, hey, Tigers are interested in doing this, Tigers are interested in doing that, hey, we maybe be looking to move on from a Javi Baez or a Kenta Maeda, for an example. Even though Hinch's, the end of season comments were insinuating that there's a place on the team for him next year too, which, again, There was a reason why. Listen, if Baez, I'm willing to make a bet right now, even if Baez wasn't injured, I'm willing to make a bet that he, along with Maeda, of course, who didn't make the postseason lineup, Baez wasn't going to make the postseason lineup either. He couldn't. I'm sorry. So I would
because of his injury.
With the ragtag group of guys that you were calling up and using than you were doing from your big supposed superstar that you're paying all this damn money to.
Yep. Yeah, and Baez was injured too. That's why.
Exactly. So, to me, that's what it all boils down to. What you got to do in these offseason. Yeah, get some more pitching whenever possible because that is your bread and butter. But damn it, go get a bat. Get 2 bats, please. Because like I said, with more, if Javi was just decent, if he wasn't so horrible, there's actually a good chance that the Tigers could have won the division this year. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, they almost did.
And that's something to keep in mind for what you can strive for and can attain to do for 2025. Because A, you know that this division is still winnable, even with how badly you performed for the majority of this season. And B, you know, well, just not necessarily a B, but yeah, that's just those main points of figuring out, hey, this is what we can do to at least compete for the division. Because winning the division will spare us that wild card mess, at least for one aspect, depending on how your seeding ends up. But winning your division was made a heavy emphasis when they introduced, additional wild card teams and wild card series for this reason. Try to give your team as much of an advantage to put together your rotation, your lineups, call up players, whatever the case may be. But if the Tigers want to compete and win the division, which I think they have the capabilities of doing so, based on how they can develop and fast track players and the coaching staff that they have up here in the majors allows them that opportunity. It just comes down to matter again. Can or will Chris Ilitch spend any money?
And that leads to our second truth or dare question. Can the Tigers contend in 2025?
Yes, for the reasons I just mentioned, the reasons that we already know of. Granted, it sucked in retrospect to try to giving up Flaherty when you did, because you could have really used him in this postseason. But still, with what you got back and what you were willing to use in capital, and knowing what you have for your farm system, it just comes down to a matter of sort up your pitching as best as possible, but you need to fix the issues, or at least mend or tend the issues that's been plaguing your offense. Period. There are multiple landfills up and down that lineup.
Yep, they are. All right, so they need more starting pitchers and they need more bats. I just don't have any faith in the team with Chris Ilitch.
Not necessarily starting pitching. I say get one more starter, but get a couple more relievers, because I think as much as Hintz was trying to reinvent the wheel, he probably could have used a couple more arms just in case, because you can tell Vest and Brisky were just exhausted by being, depending on no matter what, if they got days of rest in between, being used in 3, 4, 5 straight games is eventually going to be taxing to you. And we saw what happened to Bresky, because damn it, man, that game 4 is right there for us, and we just blew it. Just like how game 5 was right there for us, and they just blew it again too. So
yep, just one pitching mistake each, and that's what you got to avoid. So yeah, let's not forget next year. I think next year the rule of 6+ innings pitched per start that may come into play.
Yeah, that goes into effect and might be.
That's why you need more starting pitchers.
Or like I said, more starting pitchers, but just more reliable bullpen guys too.
And bats too.
There's nothing wrong with bolstering your strength. Take a look at the Lions. See what they're doing. Exactly.
Yep, and we'll get to the Lions a bit later on in this episode. Now, the Michigan Wolverines, number 24 at number 22 Illinois, the Fighting Illini at 5-1. Wolverines 3.5-point favorites, but it's going to be a grudge match. It's going to be a tight one, to say the least. Saturday at 3:30 on CBS. Jack Tuttle has to start for the Wolverines.
He is the likely starter. I haven't heard any reports or any breaking news that leads to anything different for what I've been seeing. I didn't see any aversions or adjustments that Sherrod Moore had to make throughout the week. I haven't seen anything that leads to anything there, unless something happens, knock on wood, last minute in the warm up or whatever. I expect to see Jack Tuttle to be the starter and play the majority of snaps, if not the whole game. Unless they're going to try sneak in Orgy for some packages like they did last year with him and JJ, fine. But I expect Jack Tuttle be taking the majority of snaps under center.
Yep. And then on Illinois' side, quarterback Luke Altmaier, 20 of 34 for 379 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in a 50-49 slugfest overtime win over the Purdue Boilermakers. But Illinois, Illinois' defense gave up 297 passing yards and 3 scores, plus 17 rushes for 118 rushing yards and on quarterback keepers by Purdue quarterback Ryan Brown. Mm-hmm. So Illinois does have the offense, but
their defense
they have no defense whatsoever.
Yeah, very leaky to say the least. And if you're Michigan, there are some potential holes and advantages and matchups that you can use to take advantage of that. You saw how they looked against Purdue's mobile quarterback. That leaves an opportunity for Kirk Campbell as much of a bad job I think he's done this year. This is a makeup game for him to try to factor in. Hey, we can use Orgy for some packages here. Hey, we can utilize Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings here. Hey, we got Colston Loveland. Let's utilize our best receiving option here. So as long as, because again, aside from the 2 horrible, god-awful turnovers that didn't need to happen when they did, Tuttle looked like the most competent quarterback out of what we've seen so far between Davis Warren and Alex Orgy combined. I don't know how the other players look because we didn't see them, okay? We didn't see Daniil, and we didn't see Jaden Davis. Davis, for example, because they're trying to preserve his red shirt and not burn it. But but what I see from Tuttle, I am impressed enough to where I have no problem with him getting a second chance. It's just a matter of taking care of the ball, knowing when to find your dudes, and try and again just be a game manager. You don't worry, try to play hero ball. At Michigan, in this offense, the quarterback should never have to worry about playing hero ball. Hand the ball off, find your dudes, don't turn it over. Simple as that.
Exactly. So, do you have a prediction?
I do. That 3.5, that 3.5 is tempting. It's very tempting to say Michigan will win, but Illinois will cover because, while the Michigan run defense has been outstanding, the pass defense has been inconsistent at best, and that's even with Will Johnson. I believe they didn't have Will Johnson last week against Washington, if I remembered correctly. Both him and Miles Henson. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yes. So those are 2 big, key, important players. One for your defense and your secondary for obvious reasons, and the other being your offensive lineman for obvious reasons. Henson I believe he's one of, if not the most experienced guy on that line. So again, his presence is necessary for various reasons. But knowing that this Illinois defense is susceptible to what they can allow on the run. And from what I mentioned before, Michigan should be able to score points as long as they take care of the ball. Now, what they do on defense is going to be tricky because, again, their secondary, it's been leaky on their end as well. And you have an Illinois offense who, when in the red zone, they are 24 for 20 out of 25 scoring opportunities. They have scored the ball 24 times out of 25 red zone chances, and that includes 17 touchdowns. Okay? This is going to be a sellout crowd. This is their second sellout of the season. This is the first ranked versus ranked matchup between Michigan and Illinois in Champaign since 2000. Okay, we're talking Anthony Thomas years, okay? A-Train. And the Illini, coached by Brett Bielema, he's going to try to have the crowd pumped. They're going to try to look for their first win in a ranked versus ranked matchup at home since 1991 when they beat Ohio State. all that factored in, I'd say Michigan should win. What the final score could be, I could see this being as long as they stick to basics and run the damn ball enough and try not to get too cute with throwing the ball, I could see them winning this one by 24-20 or 28-24 type of score. So
All right.
I think they'll win, and even though that hook is tempting, I think they will cover.
Oh, just barely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Michigan 30, Illinois 27. There's a bold prediction for you. So, Saturday at 3:30 on CBS.
Well, listen, if you're Michigan, this is your season is on the line from here on out, because Sharon Moore had mentioned earlier in the week about we have a goal of wanting to win out. Well, best of luck with that, because you have a game against Oregon coming up, and of course you got Ohio State at the end of the year. You'll be lucky to win one of those, so you're not going to be winning out. Okay, as a Michigan fan, I am more than content and satisfied by knowing the fact that, hey, we won the Natty last year. We saw a lot of departures for this year, so it was expected to see us that we're going to see a step back. Of course, I wasn't expecting to see this much of a step being taken back, but I digress. Knowing that what this team has shown and what's ahead of them, at this point, the best you could think of, at least for me, for what I would say, what would this be considered a successful season for Michigan? Beating Ohio State, because I don't think you're making the playoff as currently constructed. I don't think you're winning the Big Ten the way things are currently constructed. So now what's the next best thing? How about ruining Ohio State's season for the fourth year in a row and potentially getting Ryan Day fired? Yeah. That's a reason to strive for, in my view. So those type of goals are still advanced, but they got to get themselves in a momentum and a rolling momentum to where once they roll into Columbus on that last weekend here in November, they won't maybe be a 20-point underdog. So that road to Columbus, it starts here in Champaign.
Yeah, true. And all of that reminds me of Ohio State's loss to Oregon on the road. That slide at the end of the game.
When they had timeouts, by the way.
He slid when time ran out. Oh, my God.
Dude literally pulled a Dak Prescott, and we'll get to Dak's ass in just a moment.
Or Eddie Martell from The Replacements at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like a give-up slide, as John Mann would put it. I remember watching that entire movie in the past. That's what it reminded me of. It was even pieced together on Urinating Tree's latest This Week in Sports Ball NFL Week 5, Week 6 edition. But anyway, we digress. Back to our focus of the task at hand. The Spartans are back home. They got homecoming Saturday at 7:30 on NBC against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Spartans 3-3. Iowa Hawkeyes 5-point favorites, 4-2. Iowa running back Caleb Johnson is my player to watch. Mm-hmm. He was ranked second in the Football Bowl subdivision with 937 rushing yards. He is ranked second, 156.2 rushing yards per game on 18 carries, 7.94 yards per carry. Last game, 166 rushing yards on 21 carries and at least 2 touchdowns in a 40-16 win over Washington. So a tough task for the Spartans defensive front to try to stop the run. How about that?
Yeah, very much so. It's a true test for this defense. Like I said, I've always said all year, I've always liked what I've seen from the MSU defense. I like their aggressiveness. I like the fact that they get takeaways. I like the fact that they seem all in, which speaks to the general makeup of this team as a whole. But they're definitely all in and buying what their coach is selling. Which once you have your players committed mentally and philosophically, everything else it comes down to, can you execute on the field? And really, That's been the difference. That's why this team, that's why they got blown out against Ohio State. That's why they got blown out against Oregon, because when it mattered most in key moments, key situations, instead of scoring a touchdown to get early momentum, they either fumbled the ball or threw a bad interception, committed a reckless, unnecessary, back-breaking turnover that gave life to the other team and just kickstarted some ass whoopings. So if you're MSU, what you need to remember is you have a team that is capable of getting 6, maybe even 7 wins, depending on what you do against Michigan and then against the rest of this schedule. But I believe you have a potentially 6, if not 7-win team on your hands based on how your coach has carried himself, how he's convinced his players, and the talent you have that's surrounding you. Aidan Childs, yes, he can be very frustrating the way Justin Fields was frustrating in Chicago, but the kid has talent, the kid has athleticism, and he can make plays when necessary, especially when you got a guy like Nick Marsh throw the ball to. If you want to be as efficient as you can offensively, go back to that bread and butter. Don't turn over the ball. Watch the penalties on defense and do your best to handle Caleb Johnson. And if you do that, you're going to have a damn good shot at winning this homecoming game.
Yes. So, prediction.
Even though Iowa is -5, I'm picking MSU in this. I understand that Caleb Johnson is a wrecking ball. I understand that Iowa is trying to make a name for themselves or trying to prove something on their end by trying to make a dark horse run to the Big Ten title game. But if you're Michigan State, you're not worried about playing for Big Ten titles or playing for Rose Bowls. You're trying to see if you can fully turn the page on the mess that was the Mel Tucker era and fully get the Jonathan Smith era in full swing. And you do that by winning big time moments and big time games like this, because this sets a standard and makes a statement that, hey, this program is going somewhere. Where, to borrow a phrase from a potentially the next president of the United States, we're not going back. We're not going back if you're Michigan State. So I suspect them to rise up to the occasion, feed off the home energy crowd, and for once take care of the freaking football. And I'm going to pick Michigan State to win this game. Let's go 31-28. Sparty.
Wow. Oh,
listen,
man.
You know something is either weird or crazy if you have me, the Michigan fan, try it. I want to certainly say root for Michigan State, but I'm hoping they do well. I'm trying to, because I see potential in them. I see what they could be as a team by taking, just take off the blinders of the rivalry for just a second and look at it from a pure objective standard point of view. That's what you see with this Michigan State team. You see potential, but damn it just comes down to execution.
Yeah, considering but really considering the way they kept turning over the ball, they got roughed up against Ohio State 2 weeks ago. But really, in all seriousness, I think it's going to be a close one. Well, sort of. I'm going to pick Iowa 31, Michigan State 24. But it's one score, but it's going to be a touchdown.
So by your metrics, Iowa will not only win, they will cover as well.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Simple. They're -5.
Well, I'll say this. If MSU wins this could be one of those swing games that gets them to a 6-win record, or dare I say a 7-win record, because I do believe that Michigan game will be the difference as to whether or not Michigan themselves will finish at either 7-5, if not 8-4. So,
right.
Again, swing games are big.
Yep, especially on homecoming in East Lansing at Spartan Stadium.
Yep.
The Lions demolished the Dallas. Yeah.
By the way, quick note before we move on to the Lions, I think it was announced earlier this week that the start time for Michigan MSU will be at 7:30.
I heard
on the 26th, which is next Saturday. But it was going to be on BTN. So no Peacock, no NBC. If you got cable, look for Big Ten Network. That's where you're going to
I got DirecTV.
Well, there you go. Hopefully
Channel
we got
610.
right.
All right. The Lions demolished the Dallas Cowboys 47-9. I know Aidan Hutchinson left on his injury. We'll get to that after we recap this whole massacre in Dallas. David Montgomery doing his thing, 2 touchdowns. Brian Branch, 2 interceptions, 1 pass breakup, and 1 forced fumble. Jared Goff and Ben Johnson shined as usual. They were working their magic. Jamison Williams with a deep touchdown catch, a flea flicker to a double reverse flea flicker to Sam Laporta, and Aleem McNeil getting a sack, and we'll get to his extension as well, along with Montgomery's. But my goodness, it was just sweet revenge from last year, wasn't it?
This was frankly something that was loading in the barrel and coming for a long time. If you're both either the Lions or in this case, if you're the Cowboys, especially if you're the Cowboys, and especially if you're the Cowboys at home, which, by the way, and I'll get to the metrics of this later, but yeah, the metrics behind it make this one of, if not the sweetest Lions victory I had ever seen regular season wise, and that was despite the horrific cost that we saw to one of our best players. But let's go into on why this game was so satisfying to watch. First and foremost, it starts and ends with what you do on offense up front in the trenches. And when you have an offensive line that is walling off and pushing back the Cowboys defensive line, then granted, I understand. No, they did not have Dexter Lawrence. No, they did not have DeMarcus Lawrence. No, they did not have Micah Parsons. But you know what? You still suited up 11 dudes, you put them on the field, and that effort, I don't care who played or who didn't play, that effort would have had me embarrassed as a fan, because they got pushed around, they got pushed over, they got walled off, and it allowed for their running back duo, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who have now officially been coined as the duo of Sonic and Knuckles, which I think is more than apt and appropriate for both those guys. And combined, we saw from Gibbs and Montgomery, 24 carries, 144 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Both came from Monty. So that is the formula. So what makes this Lions offense go, because it starts by establishing and setting the table with the run and with your offensive line, and based on that, you can use play action, you can use your trick plays, but like I said, mainly the play action, because that's what Jared Goff is at his best. But frankly, he's also been showing that he can be pretty damn good against the pressure as well. And that used to be a knock on his game, used to be a critique against him. And now clearly maybe he's practicing against that defensive line every day, practicing against Aidan Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil and, guys that there when they were healthy. But still, this defense has been showing improvement, especially when getting after the quarterback. So I think Goff dealing with that in practice every day may have contributed to how he's been performing, at least against pressure, because he had remarkable numbers overall, especially under duress against the Cowboys. But in this game against Dallas, he was 8, continuing off of his literal perfect game against Seattle, and frankly the near flawless game that he had against Arizona. He was 18 of 25 in this one against the Cowboys with 315 and 3 touchdowns. Now, his last 3 games, the names I just mentioned, or teams I just mentioned, against Arizona, against Seattle, against the Cowboys, he has had an 82% completion percentage. Let me repeat that again. 82% completion rate. That is ridiculous to do over any 3-game stretch, especially at the NFL. But he's not only doing it with that type of accuracy, he's not doing this with just check down. He's taking chances. He's going deep when necessary. He's averaging 12.2 yards per attempt. And frankly, not really a surprise when you see the fact that he's got deep threats like J-Mo, when he can toss flea flickers to Sam Laporta, when he can use Amon-Ra in any given route, at any given moment, on any given play. Tim Patrick, another guy who, frankly, it's looking more and more he has completely filled the void that was left by Josh Reynolds, because I was seeing Goff making some plays and making some throws over the past couple of weeks to Tim Patrick that look eerily similar to how he looked against Josh Reynolds. But going back to Goff himself, he's had 7 touchdowns over the past 3 games, just 1 pick. That was that bad pick that he threw against Arizona when he tried to force one to St. Brown. And since that flawless, no turnovers, no mistakes. He knows when to place the ball, where to place the ball in certain moments. He's not forcing shit. He's finding his guys when necessary. He's taking what a defense gives him. And I'm seeing a couple of instances, over the past couple of weeks, though. He runs a big play action. He's getting good protection. He wants to take a shot downfield, but instead of forcing it, creating a potential turnover, he checks it down. Finds a Jahmyr Gibbs or finds a Brock Wright. Let those guys take care of business in open space. Get yourself a first down, move the chains, keep the line moving. It's perfect. It's simple fundamentals. Take what the defense gives you. Don't jeopardize your possession, and your offense will be fine. Because now your offense can continue milking clock, getting first downs, wearing out the defense, giving your defense chance to rest.
Scoring more touchdowns.
Yes, especially when you get in in that red zone, and you've been seeing more. And again, what was it, 5 or 6 or whatever, the amount of possessions that the Lions had the ball, they scored every single time. They scored on all of their possessions in this game.
Got to score to win.
Not one single turnover, not one single punt. And that's amazing, because Tom Brady, that's one of the few things that Tom Brady was disappointed about, is that he didn't get a chance to talk about Jack Fox, who is one of the best punters in the game. But the Lions, being the trolls that they were on their social media, decided, okay, you want Jack Fox highlights? Here you go. Here's some highlights of him being the holder, the place kick holder on the extra points and field goals. So I thought that was clever, if not a little bit funny in that regard. But that speaks to the level of high gear efficiency that your offense was. And also the fact that, frankly, Ben Johnson decided to go full sicko mode and decided to, in their own words, empty out the bag. And baby, did they empty out the bag. You mentioned the double reverse flea flicker to Laporta, which, by the way, a play that not only worked against the Cowboys, I believe it was the Steelers that did this to him just last week. So it shows how much that those assholes don't pay attention to tape. But again, it's a carbon copy of what the 49ers had done to the Cowboys with this play last year, which, again, not surprising, because the Lions pulled this play off themselves against Carolina. Look at the tape. It is virtually identical, step by step, how it went. Reverse, protection, flea flicker, open down the field, touchdown, boom. And trust me, while I'm sure Sam Laporta fantasy owners would love to see him get more yards, get more catches, the way this offense is going, it just comes down to it. Hey, week by week, keep your head on a swivel, be ready, and just produce. Because one week, we're going to be slapping you with JMO. 1 week, we're going to be slapping you with Amon-Ra. 1 week, we will be slapping you with Laporta. Or just 1 week, we're just going to ram the ball down your throats with Sonic and Knuckles. And it's based on the fact that you have an offensive line that is the best offensive line in all of football, hands down. You have a coach that has trust and willingness and the right aggression to know that, hey, you know what? The way their offense is rolling, let's run a draw play on 3rd and long to put us in a 4th and short position, because we know damn well we're getting this first down, because that's the belief that we have in ourselves, and that's the talent that we have in our offense. But then when you have a Ben Johnson, who is obviously one of the most creative minds in the game, so much so that he's gotten considerations for head coach 2 straight off seasons. When you let him go full sicko mode, the way we saw against Dallas, you got as a result, one of, if not frankly, the most, and I'd say this in a positive manner, one of the most blatant acts of disrespect that you will ever see a football team commit against another football team. I'm talking disrespect on the fact that you were throwing goal line fake. Very first play of the game, Dan Skipper reported as eligible. So that was letting Dallas know, yeah, we didn't forget about last year. We might have been saying that stuff in the press this week about, oh no, this isn't about revenge. Bullshit. This was absolutely about revenge for obvious reasons. And you know what it was? The Lions did the smart thing of not trying to bring it up so much because you know what? They played a little bit. I see what they did there. Very smart, very clever, very demure. But what it did was it lulled the Cowboys to sleep. And then you saw them to go completely disrespectful on you. Okay, you saw goal line fades to Taylor Decker. You saw hook and ladder screens to Penei Sewell. Imagine that, a 350-pound man catching a hook and ladder and barreling towards you at full speed. I'm sorry, I'm getting out of the way. I'm not tackling that big man. And then you have, when you're up 30 points and you have your backups in, on the fourth down, you have Dan Skipper line up, not as a tight end, not as an eligible receiver, not as an H-back. You have him line up, not a slot even. You have him line up to the outside as a full-ass wide receiver. You have Dan Skipper running hitch slant option routes on a fourth down because that's how much you didn't give a shit about the Cowboys' feelings. Okay? This was the worst loss that you ever gave them in the history of Jerry Jones, at least at home under Jerry Jones' ownership. This is their fourth straight home loss, if you include that ass whooping that the Packers gave them in the playoffs. And speaking of that, in those last four straight games, because in those four games, like what was the Packers, the Saints, the Ravens, and now the Lions, they have had a combined first half scoring. Get this right, 13 by the Cowboys, 135 combined by the opposing team. 24 straight games of having a deficit of at least 21 points on or more. You have Jerry Jones on his 82nd birthday, mind you, 82nd birthday, getting treated to the worst birthday present, frankly, you could ever give someone, especially someone like a Jerry Jones, and the Lions just come to the point to where you see him the next day or the next day after that threatening radio hosts for daring to ask questions. Hey, Jerry, that's what happens when you have, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, $1 billion playpen. That's what happens when you have a team or when you have teams that come into your crib and punk your ass out. That's what happens. You're going to get questions. So what the line? So, and again, with the Lions, you mentioned the Lions, what they did on defense. Since we've gushed enough over the offense, we got to give some love to that defense, man. Aaron Glenn has been amazing with what he has done for the defense, making adjustments, making schematics, certain schemes, when to make a blitz, when to have your guys drop back. It's been remarkable while, yes, there have been some instances where they've given up plays. Their scoring defense has been tremendous. Their run defense has been phenomenal. And what we saw here in this game against Dallas, 5 turnovers. 5. Brian Branch, who I'm just going to say it right now. I don't care if this is a hot take. I don't care if this gets any criticism. Brian Branch, he looks like the second coming of Ed Reed. Okay? You have Bill Belichick naming Branch as his football guy of the week on Inside the NFL the other day. Okay, that's how much of an impressive look that Branch has looked. Because listen, I'm willing to bet you, and within the next little while, it may be the next couple games, it may be in the next year or so, but one day you're going to hear Bill Belichick compare Brian Branch to Ed Reed, because that's exactly what I see. The tendencies, the way he has a nose for the football, the way he likes to deliver hard hits, and not only that, the way that he can bait you. Because on that first pick, because let's be honest, he should have had 3. He had 3 picks. 1 got called back on a BS flag. But I digress. The first official pick, it happened in the goal line, in the red zone near the goal line, and based on spacing and based on knowing your awareness of that and seeing the route develop in front of you, Branch decided to bait Dak, because I know people will say, "Oh, Dak, he made a bad throw. He was trying to look for CD." Here's what happens. Branch baited him because he saw Tolbert coming down on the flat, right? So Branch, he cheats up a couple of seconds, knowing full well Dak is going to go for CD Lamb because we saw how CD torched the secondary last year. So Dallas was going to try to go for that again. In fact, Kirby Joseph, who by the way got a pick himself, that now makes 12 career interceptions, second most in the entire NFL since 2022 when he was drafted. Him combined with BB, 7 picks through 5 games. That's the most for any safety duel in the league. Kirby Joseph had mentioned on the same Brown Brothers podcast that the game plan, the main objective of the game plan on defense, take CD Lamb out of the game, take him out of the equation. And you saw what happened when it did. Dak got too antsy, he got too anxious. He tried forcing it to him. He was able to connect with him, develop chemistry with him. He was flummoxed because he couldn't connect or get on gel with his number one target. And that's great credit to Aaron Glenn, but even better credit to the players for executing. Because like I said, on that first interception, Branch baited Dak. He came down to Tolbert to cover him. He knew that Dak was going to try to lob it to CD, and guess what happened? Branch, looking like Ed Reed, just basically played center field, back up, played his spot perfectly, played his zone perfectly, and plucked that ball out of the air. And you also mentioned the pass breakup, the forced fumble, which, by the way, came on a perfectly timed, perfectly placed punch that would make Peanut Tillman proud. And funny enough, that came seconds after Terry and Arnold just missed out on a peanut punch of himself. But that's okay. The rookie got rewarded. He got his first career fumble recovery. Who, by the way, and also by the way, no flags, no penalties on Terry and Arnold. I'm sure that did a hell of a amount of comp.
And let me add something to it. He recorded a pass breakup, a critical one on 4th and 2.
Yes, exactly, because that was a desperation move by McCarthy. He was already trailing by double digits. He was trying to get a spark going. I guarantee you that was a desperation move by McCarthy.
That's what I'm talking about.
And then they were trying to be smart. They were going to say, okay, well, if you go after Terry, and you may draw a flag. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. So very proud of the rookie on that. Very proud that he's learning in this secondary that's got Branch, that's got Kirby Joseph, that's got the players that he brought in, and Robertson and Davis. This is the perfect group for him to learn the ropes in. And in addition to that, we mentioned Aleem McNeil. He had the sack, but frankly, the way he was moving, the way he was pushing on that line, and frankly, what he's done this whole season, it's warranted that contract extension. Just the way Monty's performance has more than warranted that contract extension. This was as beautiful of a victory, of a performance, of a moment that you could ever possibly ask for if you're a Lions fan. Unfortunately, it just came as we now see. If you look at the term online, because it perfectly exemplifies this, it came at a cost. This was the literal example of a Pyrrhic victory in many ways.
Yeah, that cost, I guess, if you put it in a satire form, Aidan Hutchinson suffered a broken tibia and fibula, and all put a rod into it, 6 to 8 months to recover. He's out for the season. He'll be back in 2025 and is eligible for a contract extension, by the way. So heavy loss for the Lions. Hutchinson has been incredible.
Major loss for the team, major loss for the franchise, major loss for the league, because we as football fans, NFL fans, we now are missing out on a potentially generational year from Aidan, because in all intents and purposes, for my money, he was winning Defensive Player of the Year. That's how he was performing. That's how he looked in terms of, and that's in the numbers and in the production and the key stats and figures. It backs that up. The best at bringing bringing pressure on the QB from an edge rusher or any defensive player. The best at winning your pass rush battles. The most sacks in the league, etc., etc., etc. I've mentioned, by the way, if I failed to mention this, by the way, it's a little bit irrelevant, but the way J-Mo has been playing in terms of being, and his numbers back up his stats, him being arguably the best big play receiver in the whole league this year, that's the type of production that Aidan was doing on his side of things. He was, without question, hands down, the best edge rusher, the best defensive end that we were seeing, in this league, or at least in this season so far. And that's no disrespect to guys like TJ Watt, guys like Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa, guys like Myles Garrett. No disrespect to those dudes who are monsters in their own right. And now, frankly, with Aidan out of the way, that race for Defensive Player of the Year for that depoy, it opens up for all of them now. But that's the
grabs
that Aidan was having just earlier that day on the pre-show. It probably seems ominous of an omen to look back at in hindsight or retrospect. But Michael Strahan himself had said, Aidan Hutchinson, if anyone is going to break my single season sack record, I would be honored if it was you. That's how much of a productive year that Aidan was having. And just to see this happen to him, and by the way, as he was getting a sack on Dak Prescott, and adding the fact that really this was a freak accident because of how the fact that the injury even occurred was the way the momentum of his body or how fast and the force that he was moving around at the same time, it collided. His shin collided with a Lee McNeil's leg at the very same time. So unfortunately, this was a friendly fire accident. And if you want to compare it to any other sports injuries, there's some that come to mind for me. I would say off the top of my head, and this is a different sport, but I've seen similar injuries with Sean Livingston. I've seen similar injuries with Paul George. If you want to go bring it back to football, everyone will mention the Joe Theismann injury that he suffered on Monday Night Football from Lawrence Taylor. In more recent years, and another obvious comparison will be Alex Smith, who suffered a compound fracture himself so badly that it was not a guarantee that he would keep his leg, let alone live. That's how badly that injury was for him. Thankfully, for Aidan's case, yes, this was a compound fracture. He broke, or actually, no, it was a clean break. It was not a compound. Thankfully for him, or at least as thankful as you can be, it was not a compound. It was a clean break. He got immediate emergency surgery in Irving, Texas. That was after he was air casted on the field and carted off, which, by the way, tremendous shout out to the Cowboys and their fans. We're not cheering when Aidan went down. They recognized the seriousness of the situation. They gave him his respect, and they treated that moment with the grounded seriousness that it deserved. But props to them, and props to the medical staff for getting Aidan off that field as fast as possible. They got the surgery for him. I don't know if he's back in Detroit now or they got to wait a couple of days because they don't want to risk infections and all that good stuff. So he'll be back home soon, but at the time being, he's in Texas. I know the recovery timeline is 6 to 8 months, but based on what his family believes, and belief is a very strong word to point out here, but based on what they believe and the fact that they texted Stoney, because on 97.1, because Stoney himself came out on Twitter and said Hutch's family believes that there could be a chance that if the Lions were to make the Super Bowl, he would give it his best to try to be back for the Super Bowl. Listen, yeah. I love Aidan. I'm the biggest Aidan mark you will find here. I want him to be as safe and take things slow as best as humanly possible. I'm sure his family would love to see it happen. I'm sure, obviously, his coach would love to see it happen because, Dan Campbell mentioned in his press conference that, if there's one person I am never going to doubt, it's going to be Hutch. And for that various reason, because they know his work ethic, they know his motor, they know his mentality, of what he brings, the energy that he brings, what he represents to that building, inside that building, on that field, to his teammates, to the organization. They know what he represents. So that's a presence that is so difficult to try and fill a void or try to replace because, and it speaks to his confidence that a part of him wants to believe that he can, if he recovers in time, it could be for that. But let's be realistic here. We want to make sure and preserve your career as best as possible because he had a similar injury, not as graphic, not as brutal, obviously, but this happened in 2020. This happened in Michigan when he suffered, I believe there was a fracture of some form, may have been to his leg even. Maybe I don't know if it was the same leg or a different leg, but that was the infamous 2-4 COVID year that everything that could have possibly go wrong for Michigan did go wrong. Aidan got injured. They decided to shut him down, and then we saw what happened next year. He came back, broke the single season sack record at Michigan, which, by the way, had been held by his own father. So, if there's, like I said, there's a reason why Dan Campbell says if there's anyone he's not going to doubt, it's Hutch. It's for reasons like that. This is the kid who was the homegrown boy, born in Plymouth, went to high school in Dearborn, went to college in Ann Arbor, stayed home to play for Detroit. And so this this is a gutting injury, not just for a team, not just for a fan base, for a city, really, because that's how much of a grown connection that they've had to Aidan and to people around him. And we've seen before now the videos and the viral stuff, clips popping out of him helping out sick children and his foundation and wearing the mottos, the mottos of the city of Detroit itself, mind you, wearing that on his shoulder, wearing it on his merchandise, the Latin phrases that says, being resurgent, and rising from the ashes. That's the mentality that he believes in himself, and that's going to be his best weapon to lean on as he gets through this recovery. So while I wish him nothing but the best, while I would love to see him pull off some Terrell Owens type of shit to where, or Willis Reed to where, hey, dream scenario, Lions do make the Super Bowl after all. Here comes Aidan somehow, some way. Let's be mindful. Let's be reasonable. And if the doctors and if things the way are looking to say, hey, go for recovery because your future is it's the bigger thing here. Your long-term future is the bigger priority over the short-term gain of this one particular season.
Yeah, and speaking of the Lions and the Super Bowl, that leads me to my Lions edition of the Truth or Dare question. Can the Lions still contend for the Super Bowl? Some people have been panicking, but both you and I know that the Lions still can contend for the Super Bowl. They don't even need Max Crosby, okay? They would have to trade way too many of their players for just one player.
Well, not players really, more so picks than anything. Picks.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, well, but I still think they can contend for the Super Bowl, definitely.
I lean towards truth, but I gotta be honest with you, man. To borrow a phrase, or to paraphrase the one quote from Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans, when he said, "You cannot replace a Gary Bertier, you cannot simply replace an Aidan Hutchinson, both in terms of production, in terms of presence, in terms of energy, all of the above." That's what he brings and what he brought to your team. That's what, in terms of, if you can make a list, right, of players who absolutely, positively could not go down under any circumstances for the Lions, outside of Goff, who would be number one, right behind him is Aidan, right? So this is the doomsday scenario. This is the nightmare rotation scenario that Lions fans could have feared outside of Jared Goff going down, because I don't know how your defense is going to be able to be as efficient as you were, both in getting after the quarterback and mainly stopping the run, because Aidan's presence was able to allow OCs, offensive coordinators, to game plan mainly about, okay, how the hell can we handle 97? Now with 97 gone, it forces Aaron Glenn to rearrange some things on the line, rotations, schematics. He may have to blitz more if necessary, but he's got the personnel to do it. I think getting back a Broderick Martin, I know it's going to sound ridiculous to say, but getting depth pieces, guys that you do know, getting a Broderick Martin back, getting back an Ife Melifanu, for example, would be helpful, because you can bring those guys in as extra rushers, extra blitzers. You can bring in a Melifanu or even bring in a Brian Branch on a blitz and have Melifanu stay back and cover in safety, because we've seen how Branch can fly to the football. And that'll be another element of his game that you can open up and explore and expand upon. So if you're Aaron Glenn, Yes, it's an absolute gutting moment to lose Hutch, but you can still contend based on what you can do, making arrangements with your defense, and frankly, yes, Brad Holmes, you're gonna have to make a deal. You're gonna have to make a move of some kind. Is it Max Crosby? No, he doesn't have to be. You would love it. Trust me, that would be the literal equivalent of okay. Victor Martinez blows his knee. What does Mike Ilitch do? He signs Prince Fielder to a 9-year deal or whatever whatever the details were. Yes, we know how
I
it
think it
didn't
was
work.
8 years, but yeah, Fielder.
Yeah. Yes, we know how things didn't work out, but in the moment itself, knowing of what this team's window was and knowing what move was necessary and had to be made, either he, Mike, because I'm saying even though yes, Dabrowski was the GM. Let's be honest, signing Prince Fielder to 9 years, $214 million after
It was
after Victor blows out his knee. That's a Mike Ilitch move, especially the fact that Scott Boras he was talking to Scott Boras, who I'll mention briefly momentarily, but this is what Brad Holmes has got to do. If you got to give up 2 or 3 first round picks to get a Max Crosby, if the Raiders are open to that idea, I would consider taking a plunge on that because your window is now. There's got to be some moments and some situations where you got to enter a mode or mood that's simply F those picks. And frankly, this calls for it. This is your break glass in case of emergency. This is your plan Z because your horse, okay, your best player, at least on the defensive side, but arguably your best player in the whole damn team, he's gone now. Okay? So you got to find a way to mask that void while not, in his own words, mortgaging your future. Because I understand the process of building through the draft, but guess what? You're pretty much set now, especially on offense, and I would dare say you're pretty much set on defense too with the guys that you built through the draft, okay? Guys like Aleem McNeil, guys like Kirby Joseph, guys like Brian Branch, guys like Darian Arnold, guys like Ife Melifonwu. That's just the damn defense alone. And we know what they've developed and gotten on offense, okay, between Saint and JMO and Jameer and Laporta. It speaks for itself. So now what do you need left on defense? You got to make some moves. You got to bring in some star guys, especially at key spots where your star guy just went down. So if you're not going to get a Max Crosby, can you get a Myles Garrett? If he's too much, can you get a Haason Reddick? Can you get a Darius Smith? Can you get
Haason Reddick? Let's touch on him. Trending truth.
I'll get him in a second. But can you try to get us a Darius Smith? Can you try to get a Jadeveon Clowney? We know they signed Isaiah Thomas from Cincy, and he can be a good contributor in terms of helping you stop the run and trying to create matchups to where McNeil can sort through and explode. But that's not as easy as saying, oh yeah, this is going to be a guy to replace Hutch. But we'll see. Because if you make certain moves, if you get a Max Crosby, if you get a Myles Garrett, or even if you get a Haason Reddick, that will very much do. Very much.
Yeah, and speaking of the Lions and Haason Reddick, we'll get to Isaiah Thomas in a second, but the Lions have shown interested. They were interested in trading for Haason Reddick, a former Jets and Eagles edge rusher. ESPN Plus projected for the Lions only to give up a 2026 6th-round pick for Reddick. That's it. So it's actually a much smaller deal than the Crosby deal.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, that looks too optimistic for my taste. ESPN Plus is one thing, Woody Johnson is another. Okay, Woody Johnson, basically gave the keys of the kingdom to Aaron Rodgers, and he put a bullet in Robert Saleh throughout midway through the season. Okay, so you don't know what Woody Johnson is thinking of and what he's going to do. And I'm talking about the owner because the GM of the name escapes me at the moment. But this smells like what we've seen so far from the Jets. It reeks of Woody Johnson. So I don't know if he feels that. Now, granted, though, he may have no other choice but to trade Haason Reddick because Reddick has made it clear he either does not want to be with the Jets or he does not like the Jets in some way, shape, or form, because he has held out the entire time, the whole offseason and even into this season, pulling a Le'Veon Bell of sorts. He's sticking to his principles. He's sticking to his guns, even to a point to where his previous agency, CAA, they dropped his ass. But credit to Reddick, he stood his ground. He decided to say, you know what? Nope, I still want to get the type of deal that I want, whether it be a long-term deal here or a long-term deal somewhere else. So what did he do? He hired Drew Rosenhaus. I mentioned Scott Boras before. Drew Rosenhaus is to football the way Scott Boras is to baseball. I remember Drew Rosenhaus going back to the days where he was managing T.O. Drew Rosenhaus is basically, when I believe if you do the research, he was the inspiration for the titular character of Jerry Maguire. So Drew Rosenhaus knows his business. He knows his stuff. And even though, again, going back to Woody Johnson, even though Woody Johnson says, he would prefer to have Haason Reddick here long term, let's be honest, bro. If Drew Rosenhaus is hired as your agent and he's known for expediting deals, and to me, I've seen, it could be either or, but I'm leaning more towards the fact that Reddick would rather be traded than play in New York. Now, what the Lions could give up for him, I would say, I think it's too optimistic to say, oh, yeah, we'll take a 6th rounder. Nah, the Jets are going to want more than that. They're going to want a higher draft pick than that. I'm not saying give up your 2nd or your 3rd or even your 1st, but they're going to want for something more than a 6th round pick. They're probably going to want multiple picks, let's be honest.
Right. So, like we mentioned, like you touched on Isaiah Thomas, the Lions plan to sign him to from the Cincinnati Bengals practice squad and place him on the active list. So, so they get a little bit of help on the pass rush.
Plus, I believe he was teammates with DJ Reader last year, correct?
He was, yes.
Yes.
They were both on the Cincinnati Bengals pass rush. Yes, so they can work together.
There's familiarity there, and also, I mentioned the Tigers coaches earlier. Can we give some credit to Terrell Williams, please? The Lions defensive line coach, please, because there's kind of a reason why that we saw Aleem McNeil take a step up. There's a reason why we're seeing guys like Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Pascal starting to live up to their potential. There's a reason why I'm having high hope even for Broderick Martin when he comes back from his injury. It's because of the work of the defensive line coach, period. They stole him from the Titans and is paying out the great dividends so far for the Lions.
When's James Houston going to come back too?
I don't know at this point, man. The fact that he's been considered healthy scratch for the majority of the season leads me to believe that something that's happened to where he's fallen out of favor. And I would not be surprised if, because trade deadline's only in a few weeks. I would not be surprised if we hear his name being discussed as a potential bargain chip. I'm just being honest with you. Because it should be a situational pass rusher anymore now. You got to show some development. Yes, he had the 7 to 8 game stretch where he had 7 or 8 sacks, but that was 3 years ago now? What have you done for me lately, boy?
2021.
Yeah, what have you done for me lately, brother?
Yeah. Nothing besides his injury. And of course, the extensions of Aleem McNeil, 4 more years, $97 million. Holy cow. And of course, David Montgomery, 2 years, $18.25 million, $18.25 million. So
both
we've already mentioned them.
Yeah, both well deserved,
both
well earned. I should say. In the case of Aleem McNeil, along with that, out of that $97 million, $55 million of that is fully guaranteed. By the way, and just at the age of 24, he is now the 4th highest paid, I believe, defensive tackle. Yeah, 4th highest paid DT in all football. And frankly, I like the move, and it speaks to how the Lions really do put a care and emphasis on taking care of their own first, and they truly mean that and live by that code and mantra. Because again, McNeil, he was the third or fourth round draft pick out of 2021. same year as Panay, same year as Amon-Ra, and again, he's now the third player of that draft pick of that class to get this type of extension. So, hats off to him. He's more than earned it. Um, it'll be interesting to see how much of this he can keep up, especially now that Hutch is gone. But I've really liked what I've seen from McNeil over the past couple of years, and again, congrats to him on getting that. Same thing with Montgomery, and the way that he was running with that football on Sunday, you would have thought that he was playing for 18 million and not just signed, and not just getting signed to 18 million. That's how effective and efficient that he has been, and how much of a angry runner that he has been all year long. So, Monty, I think it this way because, and it kind of speaks, unfortunately, to one of the other weaknesses of this team, which is depth, because their stars are so damn good. But and as much as we like seeing the development of Jahmyr Gibbs and him getting more touches when necessary, you need David Montgomery in this offense to keep things as perfectly balanced as possible, because what he gives you on the ground game absolutely table sets everything for your offense. Goff's play action, Ben Johnson's trickery, whatever the case may be. If Dan Campbell wants to be aggressive on 4th and short, he can, because he's got a David Montgomery that he can hand the ball to and say, be that hammer, be that bell cow, be that wrecking ball. So David Montgomery is as crucial to this offense as anyone else not named Jared Goff or Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs. That's how important Monty is to this team, and especially to this offense.
Yep. And they're going to need all those, including Monty, when they head to Minnesota, U.S. Bank Stadium, to kick off with the Vikings Sunday at 1 on Fox. Vikings are 1.5-point favorites. So it's really, really, really close. It's going to be a grudge match. Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson are the offensive players to watch on the Vikings offensive unit. Also, former Lion tight end T.J. Hawkinson's going to be involved. Man, it's a grudge match. That's it.
It's a grudge match. It's a rivalry matchup, and it's literally a battle for the division lead. And by the way, can we speak of the fact that this NFC North has turned into an absolute bloodbath of a division? It's not only the best division in football right now, it's got quite possibly the best quarterback play of any division in all of football right now. And that includes a rookie and Caleb Williams and Sam Icy Ghost Darnold. Okay, that speaks to how well rounded this division has been, and how, frankly, you wouldn't be surprised if you see 3 teams make the playoffs from this division easily. But this is a battle for the division lead. If the Lions do win this, even though they'll have the same record as the Vikings and also give them their first loss because they are undefeated, they will have essentially first place because what of that head-to-head tiebreaker. So knowing that and knowing the fact that this is an important game, you're at Minnesota, you're going to see some angry Minnesota fans wanting their own revenge, because remember, when the Lions clinched the division last year, it was in Minnesota. So you're going to have to see some angry Viking fans. They're going to want to make some noise, make their presence be known and be an X factor. Other X factors, T.J. Hawkinson is one, Jordan Addison is another, Jalen Naylor. These are just the guys on offense for Minnesota. That speaks to how well put together and well rounded, frankly, that they are as a team. To where I expected them to be to be in the spot to where they're going to be giving the Lions fits. But the thing is, though, I was expecting that with J.J. McCarthy. I was not expecting that with Sam Darnold. Okay, so the fact that Darnold has been as efficient as he has been, it helps that you have an offense that is as well rounded and put together as Minnesota's is. And oh, by the way, you have literally the best receiver in all of football in Justin Jefferson, who has absolutely feasted on the Lions. In his 8 career games against Detroit, JJ Jettis, He's got over 1,000 career yards already against the Lions. Just in the last 3 matchups alone, 29 catches, 559 yards, 2 tutties. And mind you, one of those games, he had Nick Mullins throwing him the football. So you got your hands full. And as much improved that your defense and your secondary has been, as much as I love Brian Branch, I see the future in Terry Arnold, and I love Kirby Joseph, you will get tested. This will be the biggest test you'll be facing all year from an offensive standpoint, because you have Justin Jefferson, and you're going to be facing him twice this season. Oh, by the way, the first time you're facing him at home too. Jefferson is, frankly, the most dangerous weapon to look for offensively. And oh, by the way, this is a Vikings team that still has a nasty defense. It's still going to get after you, still going to hit you. And frankly, I've been talking about safety play between Branch and Kirby Joseph and even Melifonwu. Who's another safety you got to consider here? Harrison Smith. Harrison friggin' Smith. The guy has been in Minnesota forever. He's been a thorn in the Lions' side. He has had made big plays. He's made big picks throughout his career. And to me, he's a future Hall of Famer. And that is a guy, if you're Jared Goff, you have got to keep an eye on throughout the entire course of this game. It's not really so much anyone on that defensive, on that front 7 that concerns me. It's that back 7. And I'm looking out for 22. I'm looking out for Double Deuce. I'm looking out for Harrison Smith. What is he going to do? How is he going to try to jam our receivers? How is he going to try to, break up or create discourse for our passing game, trying to disrupt our rhythm? So Harrison Smith will be the biggest X factor to me on that Vikings defense. If he gets in his groove, look out. It's going to be a long day. But if you can make big plays early, get your big strikes early, find JMO downfield, find St. Brown or Laporta across an open space, get another big play to Tim Patrick. Why not? But be balanced in knowing the fact that, hey, we still have to use our bread and butter as much as possible. We know what we are. We know what our DNA is. And frankly, we're facing a team that is essentially a mirror image of ourselves, based on makeup, based on construction, based on intensity, based on how they play, and based on the fact that these are these 2 teams have the highest scoring plus differential in the entire league. Differential margin in the league. Minnesota plus 63. Detroit right behind them at plus 60. And the fact that this line opened, I believe, at 2.5 points and now has come down to 1.5 as a favor for Minnesota. Even though it's on the road, I expect this to be an absolute barn burner, very stressful. I still think the Lions have what it takes to win. Jared Goff will have to take care of the football in this one if they're going to have a chance at winning, because that crowd is going to become unglued at any and all mistakes that he makes. But stay efficient, stay focused, take what the defense gives you. Don't force anything. Know your bread and butter. Cash in the red zone the way you've been doing, and you will put yourself in a position to win this game. The defense will have their hands full with Jettis. And, of course, they got guys like Addison and Naylor and T.J. Hawkinson that I mentioned. You also got to worry about Aaron Jones. Now, he is questionable, but if he's going, that's going to be another test for your defense, especially on the ground. And, frankly, for this to be the first team that you face after losing Hutch, it may not be fair, but that's the NFL for you. You play who's on your schedule, and you got to, and like I said, it's literally next man up. And, man, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota wins this. Could they cover? Possibly. I'm going to pick the Vikings. I'd say it's going to be a 33-31 type of deal. We may see it come down to the very end, the way we've been seeing it come down to the end for the past few years now between these 2 teams, especially since Dan Campbell's arrived. Practically all of their games, maybe I think for the exception of the Week 18 game last year, all their games has come down to 1 possession. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is another one possession game. Maybe a last second field goal wins this either way. But in the end,
Like Greg Joseph.
I'm actually picking the Vikings to win this one. Sorry, Lions fans. But knowing that emotional high and also that trying to be getting cut off from that emotional high with this emotional low of losing Hutchinson, and you're going on the road, and it's a divisional game, and it's a team that's probably pissed off against you last year the way you were pissed off against Dallas. Yeah, I'm going to hedge my bets and say that Minnesota likely wins this one. That's just how I see it.
Yep. I'm going to go Minnesota winning by a full field goal. I'd say 36-33.
So we're expecting high scoring either way. Again, but I'll say this, though. It's depending on who you play. If you're facing stout defenses, you're not going to be blowing out people or running 30 or 40 points up on them. Now, if you're facing soft or weak or trash teams, yeah, you're going to see it happen. I think they just saw some things they took advantage of, and they executed perfectly, literally perfectly against Seattle. And again, against the Cowboys were missing a couple of dudes, but it don't matter. They still made them look soft. I don't think you're going to be.
Yep, and Jerry Jones is as senile as Donnie Chump, mind you.
Yes.
I don't want to mention the real name anymore.
But I don't think you're going to be pushing around Minnesota the way you pushed around Dallas, the way you pushed around Seattle.
Absolutely not.
The way you pushed around the Rams. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, the Vikings are even as high as the Chiefs, the back-to-back Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, the only two undefeated teams remaining in the league, the Vikings and the Chiefs.
Exactly. So that's Lions for you. The Red Wings, oh my God. What a horrible start. 1-3-0, just 2 goddamn fucking points. They blanked the Nashville Predators 3-0 in a game where Cam Talbot stood tall on his head, on his mask, made 42 saves. Oh man, Andrew Kopp scored a goal, and then they played the New York Rangers in a home set, got outscored 9-3. They lost 4-1 at Madison Square Garden and 5-2 at Little Caesars Arena. Igor Shesterkin stood tall in Game 1. Cam Talbot just couldn't hold enough of his ice crease against those guys. Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, Zibanejad scoring a goal in Game 1. Artemi Panarin with a hat trick in Game 2 in downtown Detroit. That's why the Rangers are contenders, but the Red Wings, I don't know, man. A lot of people have clamored for Derek Lalonde to be fired, and they may have a case. Man,
this is, trust me, if you were trying to convince Eisman to give you another chance, this has not been the right start for you to prove yourself, because I don't know how you keep going through this. Like, if you're going through games and going through days and weeks to where you're getting blown out, you're looking lifeless, you're looking inept, I don't know how much longer you can keep that going without getting the pole plugged on you. So now Lalonde is in a stretch. He's in a situation where, yes, at this point, he's coaching for his job now. Like, he is coaching for his job at this point, in my view. So there's no excuse for this. Absolutely none.
No.
It's completely embarrassing.
And the Red Wings rematch with the Predators Saturday at 2. And then they head to Long Island to play the New York Islanders Tuesday at 7:45. And then they return home against the New Jersey Devils Thursday at 7. All three of those games forthcoming are televised on Bally Sports Detroit.
By the way,
the Red Wings are going to have their hands full.
Yeah, they will. And by the way, Bally Sports, I think that's going to be getting a makeover or facelift soon, because it needs something to do with naming rights being purchased or won by FanDuel, something to that effect. So you may be seeing adjustments or changes to that style and presentation very shortly. Just saying.
Wow. I wonder if that I would have.
Yeah, it's just the latest update development from the old Diamond Sports bankruptcy thing. That's all.
Ah, gotcha. So how would it affect the Tigers, by the way?
Well, I believe that they had an option for their season next year that was, I think, ended by Bally or whatever the case may be. I know the MLB has for teams before offered to cover the streaming, for the coverage of that sort. So depending on how things work out, it'll likely just get another. They'll work out some type of deal to where they'll remain on the network for 2025. I will be surprised if we see different changes for 2026.
Yeah. And then the Pistons ended their NBA preseason with a 108-92 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers at Little Caesars Arena. The Pistons bench and reserve players just outplayed the Cleveland starters from what I read on X. Wow.
See what happens when you add players that have experience and know what to do, and also you have a coach that knows how to use them with proper rotation, proper lineups, and oh, by the way, spacing.
JB Bickerstaff by name.
Yes, I no disrespect to Monty Williams, and obviously he was obviously in a situation to where he was more so caring about his wife's health at the time than basketball, obviously. But it showed, man. It showed that he clearly took the money and was stealing money from Tom Gores at this point, because seeing what I've been seeing from not just Cade Cunningham, but also from Jaden Ivey, also from Jalen Duren, and now from what I'm seeing from Ron Holland and other guys and Fontecchio, and now you're seeing contributions from Tim Hardaway Jr. and the return of Tobias Harris. This is the type of stuff that you want to see, man. I'm not saying, oh yeah, we're going to win 40 games and we're going to playoffs, but if you can give this city, or at least show some semblance of a pulse of where, yeah, we can win more than 20, 25 games. We can try to win 30 games. We can try to
Slight progress, perhaps.
Compete for a play-in spot, perhaps. I'm not going to go that far, but like you said, progress is the key. It has to be, because you're expected to have another high draft pick in 2025. Hopefully, you won't get fucked over by the lottery this time around. But even still, it's just a matter of what can you show me this year that was better than last year and gives me hope for next year and beyond. And it starts with your core players, those guys that I already mentioned, and you go from there. And I think you have the right coach, or at least a good coach with the right coaching staff around him. And again, I go back to coaching staffs for this reason. If Fred Vinson can really help be a shock doctor, a witch doctor of sorts for some of his team's shooting woes, then yeah, they do have the chance to compete for a play-in spot, because I think the matter of establishing their identity on defense is the main important thing. And you're seeing it in guys like Ron Holland, who's being a pest by stealing the ball or getting rebounds. You're seeing that with Duren being his rim protective self. You're seeing that with Cade Cunningham getting and Jaden Ivey intercepting lanes and getting steals and starting transition. Because yeah, in a league like this, your defense can be your offense. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to go wild and oh my goodness, but yeah, I have, for the first time in a while, some optimistic hope that this Pistons scheme is truly moving in the right direction.
All right. And I'll start next Wednesday when they start their regular season schedule against the Indiana Pacers at 7 on Bally Sports Detroit, and then at Cleveland against the Cavaliers in a rematch from the preseason to the regular season next Friday at 7:30 on Bally Sports Detroit, and then they got the Celtics in the hole, and so on and so on and so forth. Download the Pistons mobile app for the entire schedule. So big games for the Pistons coming up.
Let's see what they're made of.
Yep, can't wait. So, what all did we learn in this episode?
Well, we learned that both Michigan and MSU are ready to try to finish the second half of their seasons as strong as possible. We learned that the Red Wings are looking like an absolute disaster unless things change and quickly. We learned that the Pistons are looking to make a name and identity for themselves as the season soon starts. And we learned that, by the way, we also learned that the Tigers, as much of a magical ride it's been for them, they still have weaknesses that they need to cover if they want to consider or have thoughts of taking that next step and competing for a division title next year, competing for a potential deep playoff run. You got to start by fixing up that lineup, man. You just have to. And what we also learned from the Lions.
Question is, can Chris Illich spend on that too?
Again, that's the eternal question.
I don't think he can.
That's the eternal question, and we have an eternal answer. But that being said, we did learn finally at last that the Lions were making a statement, not just to the Dallas Cowboys, but in my opinion, to the rest of the league. We learned, though, however, that domination and that statement came at a true Pyrrhic cost because of the injury and the means of that injury to Aidan Hutchinson and what it means to this team and for this franchise. So hopes are still there for a Super Bowl, but you must acknowledge that it's going to get much, much more difficult with Hutch gone now.
Yeah. So the rest of the entire team has to step up, period. Next man up. Next man up. That's it. So that's all we've learned on this episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page, subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and turn on all notifications on the bell icon. Watch each of our episodes in full to help improve our public watch hours. Follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Also join its supporters club. Business endorsements go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Best Buy with Geek Squad in Traverse City. Thanks very much for fixing my iPhone 13 screen, by the way. My Face ID still works after my last two repairs. Cali Tickets. Call 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt and t-shirt. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City. I need one sometime soon. Family Healthcare Dental Center in Cadillac. Hooters of Saginaw. I may go there a bit later tonight after the game in Ithaca against Tecumseh high school football. It's a Denise Jewelry in Lake City, one of my local friends. Let's Roll With It rolled ice cream in Cadillac. Last week's flavor of the week was pumpkins. Oh man, it was I think it was like pumpkin pie or pumpkin spice. I couldn't quite remember. But anyway, like them on Facebook. Follow them on TikTok at the Food Mafia LLC. And check that. That was Nutty Buddy. That was the flavor of the week. Wow. That was really, really chocolatey and tempting. So as I continuing on, follow them on Instagram at the Food Mafia Rolled Ice Cream. Northern Auto Lab in Lake City. I have an appointment October 23rd at 11 a.m. just for an oil change. Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195. And on Facebook, Pro Quality Cleaners of Cadillac. The Raven Social Restaurant on South Mitchell Street in downtown Cadillac. Shout out to the Gorski family. Steve were cooking stunning dishes, and Billy, his wife Billy Gorski, the bartender. Union Barber in Birmingham and Ferndale. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield, and Well-Being with Catherine Palms. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation of the Huddle Sports Network. We'll be back next Thursday night. Late night, that is. Until then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips signing off. But remember, we always observe and detect the truth about Michigan sports because the truth is out there. Stay on the lookout. Hit them with a hind.
And like I always say, take care. Please stay safe, especially, and it holds even much stronger meaning this week. Get strong, Hutch. Heal up, brother.
Yep, absolutely.